Hi, this is Don McAllister, and welcome to another edition of ScreenCastsOnline for Mac. This week, I'll be taking a look at a topic that's been in the news a lot recently, and that's security and privacy, especially in relation to email. I've also included a section at the end of the show announcing the availability of the iPhone and iPod Touch version of the ScreenCastsOnline monthly magazine, along with full instructions on how to get it and how it works. The issue of privacy and security is high on the agenda recently, following some of the disclosures and stories circulating in the press and media. Now, despite so much monitoring and apparent lack of privacy, there are tools available that will allow you to take back some control on just who can read your emails, as well as give you some reassurance that your emails are not tampered with or that you don't suffer from impersonation. So this week I'm going to walk you through the installation and configuration of GPG Mail 2 for OS X. This is a free donation-supported plugin that allows you to secure your emails with ease using the power of OpenPGP. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to bring some things to your attention. Now, once set up, the process of sending secure messages is pretty simple, but it mightn't be for everybody. And if the benefits of having secured email communications aren't that important to you, it's probably not worth going through the hassle. However, it may well be that other people might want to send secured messages to you, in which case it might be worth setting up a public and private key as demonstrated in the first part of the screencast. The ability to send secured emails between two people does need both participants to be set up with these public and private keys, so I'm making a version of this screencast free for all to download. So if you do want to go ahead and set up GPG Mail, you'll be able to send a copy of the video to other people to encourage them to get set up too. Now, as usual, if you do decide to install GPG Mail 2, I won't be able to provide any personal support, but there are some great support forums, a knowledge base, and some volunteer support staff available over at support.gpgtools.org. There are a number of tools to install as well as the plugin. If we go across to gpgtools.org, I'll give you some information here. If we go to the download button, so it's a suite of applications. One is the plugin for Apple Mail. There's a keychain application to manage the OpenPGP keys, some services, and also the underlying engine of the suite. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and just download the GPG Suite. Now, it is donationware. It's open source, so it's all free. But if you do want to donate, use a credit card, use PayPal, do a wire transfer, or donate via Bitcoin. But I'm going to go ahead and go up to my downloads folder and let's have a look at that. Okay, so we've got a disk image file. I'm going to open the disk image file and it should give us an installation package, and I just tap on the installation package. Once you're happy with everything, just go ahead and say continue, and I'm just going to do a standard installation. Okay, I have got Mail running in the background, so it's prompting me to quit Mail, which I will do. It's prompting me to access my contacts. We'll say OK, and we have this first screen here. Let me just pop Safari down at the back. And hiding behind this keychain access window, there's the installation complete. You can get access to a quick start tutorial or access to the support forums from here as well, but I'll just close that down. And when you do the install, you will be presented with a web page with full instructions, but I've actually just popped them out of the way and I'll talk you through the standard installation. So this is the GPG Keychain Access application. I've just change the screen size to fit in with the screencast. And this is one of the applications within the suite of applications that we've just installed. And this is the one that manages the key pairs. I mentioned in the introduction about a public and private key, and these are the mechanisms that allow you to encrypt securely your emails between various people. So the first time that you run this, you might already have a key. I'm not actually going to cover that, so if you've already got a key, you'll probably know what to do with it. But I'm just assuming for this installation, this is the first time that you've actually generated a public and private key. So the first thing we need to do, as you can see here, is to generate a new key pair. Now, it's picked up screencastsonline@gmail.com, but what you need to do is just double check that that's actually the email account that you're using in your Mail application. I know for a fact that that's not. I've actually reconfigured my Mail application, so I'm going to start off Mail. I'm just using Alfred to run applications on here. Okay, and I'll go to Mail Preferences. Right, so my Apple mail account that I'm using is scodemo3@icloud.com. So that's what I want to set up my public and private key for. That's the email address I'm using in mail.app. You can at a later stage add additional keys for additional email addresses if you want, but let's keep things nice and simple. I'll just pop that down. So I need to overtype this with the same email address that I'm using in mail.app, so scodemo3@icloud.com. Now, there are some advanced options. You can have a look at those, but you don't really need to do anything with them at this time. So we'll close that down. And this option here to upload public key after generation. You might be a little bit concerned about this, but you can leave it off and then upload it later. But I'm going to save a step in the future and just tick that box now. Upload public key after generation. And that way, people who want to send me secure documents or secure emails can actually find my public key. So it's nothing to worry about, but just upload your public key and then people can find your email address to send you secure documents. So with that all filled in, we'll just say generate key. Right, we need to enter a passphrase. So you really need to create a strong password for this. Also, you need to make sure that you don't lose it, because if you do lose it, you won't get access to your public or private keys. So what I'm going to do, if I just move this out of the way slightly, I'm actually going to use 1Password to generate my password. 1Password is an application that we've used before. I've covered before on the show. I'll pop a link to the original 1Password show up on the screen for you. But I'm just going to log into 1Password. You don't have to use 1Password, by the way. I just prefer to use 1Password because I can generate a strong password and also it will store it for me as well for later retrieval. But this step is entirely optional. You can just type in a passphrase and as long as you remember it, you'll be fine. But in 1Password, I'm going to say File, New Item, New Password. It's going to generate that's a nice strong password for me. Let's give it a title. Okay, and I'll say copy. So let's copy the password into the clipboard. We'll say save. And that's stored in 1Password for me. I can view it by going to Preferences and Display Generated Passwords in the sidebar. There's my generated password. So I can always get back to here to check on that password. But let's close 1Password down. We're now finished with that. And if I paste it in here, say OK. We'll paste it again. Command V, OK. So there is my new key. So that's all set up and ready to go. This other key in here is actually to send secure emails to the team at GPGTools.org. But we'll come back to keychain access later on when we're searching for other people's public keys, all part of the process of sending secure emails. So let's close that down. So we've set up a public and private key that match the email address that I'm using within mail.app. So let's go ahead and send our first encrypted mail. So just as normal, I'll just hit the send mail and you'll notice, well, a couple of differences. This is my standard new message. We've got OpenPGP up at the top and we also have these two icons down here. This icon here, this little star with the tick in, that means we're ready to sign messages with our key. And I can actually switch that on or switch that off. So the tick means everything's fine. This message here, it can't be encrypted, so you have to enter at least one recipient first. Now, just for demo purposes, I'm just going to send this to myself. So scodemo3@icloud.com. Now, once we've entered that address, you'll see that the lock has changed from grey to black. So we can actually encrypt the message. So if I click on there, right, so this message is now going to be encrypted. Subject, my first encrypted message. And the message is, hi, scodemo3, only you and I can view the contents of this message, providing the icons above show that to be the case, and best regards. Now, the icons I'm talking to don't refer to these icons. What I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to send this mail. Right, first thing I need to do is to enter my passphrase. And by the way, the passphrase can be a phrase. It can be a number of words put together, a small sentence. But I need to remember the passphrase that I set for this particular key. And that's over in 1Password. So if I go across to 1Password, I can just copy this from here, pop that back out the way, we'll paste it in. Now, if it's something I can remember it, or I can save it in the standard OS 10 keychain, so I don't have to remember it or keep looking it up. I can also set a timeout value as well within my preferences. My GPG mail preferences in system preferences, there is a sort of timeout value that allows it to be remembered for a certain time. So if you're sending lots of mails off, but I'm going to save it in my keychain. We'll say OK. And that should now get sent off and should arrive back here. Here we go. So there it is, my first encrypted message. So if I open here, we'll have a look at the details. Right, so I can see that it was encrypted, but this little symbol here shows that it's been unencrypted and it has been signed by SCO-Demo3 at iCloud.com. So I know who it's come from, and that's pretty much guaranteed it's come from that recipient, and I know it's been encrypted, and I've been able to unencrypt the message. And of course, that's all done in the background by the GPG system. Let's try sending another email off to another recipient. So if I just go to create a new mail, and this time I'm going to send it to another address. So this time I'm going to send it to my donmc123 at mac.com address. But you'll notice that the little grey icon, we can still sign it, but the grey icon hasn't turned to black. So the message can't be encrypted, no public keys available for the following address, and use the keychain access application to search and import the keys for those addresses. Okay, so I could send this off. Basically, it would be digitally signed by me, so the recipient would know it come from me, but it wouldn't be encrypted, so anyone who could intercept the email could actually read it. So ideally, I would like to send a fully encrypted email off to Don McAllister. So what I need to do is go and find his public keys. And this is where I mentioned before about sort of uploading your public key so that other people can find it. If I go across to, well, let's run the GPG keychain access application. I need to search for the public key for donmc123 at mac.com. And the way I can do that, I can do a simple keystroke, which is Command F, or if we go to key, here we go, search for key. So again, Command F. If I do that, right, I could search for his surname. I could, if I know the full email address, I can actually type that in and that will hone in directly to that email address. But if you don't know the full email address, you can search by name. But let me just go ahead and say donmc123 at mac.com. And I know for a fact that I have already published this public key. If we search for the key, there it is. So that was created today. I'm going to retrieve the key. Okay, so that's now in my GPG keychain access application. So I know Don McAllister's public key. I can close that. I can see it in here as well. I can close that down now. If I go back across to mail, tap on the recipient, and you'll see the lock change to black. So I can now encrypt. So if I tap on there, and then just address and send my mail. Once I've completed my mail, just hit send. Oh, strange, I thought I'd saved it in keychain. Let me just try that again. Save in keychain, paste in my passphrase and say OK. And that's now gone off. Let's take a quick look at preferences for GPG. If I go into System Preferences, okay, so I can set up my default key, which in this instance I want to be the SCO demo key. I can use the keychain to store passphrases by default. I'll probably switch that on. This is the option for remembering passphrases. So if you don't want to use the keychain, we've currently got it set to store for 600 seconds. The key server that we're going to retrieve keys from, and then also auto retrieve key for verification. As far as updates are concerned, you can switch these on to download automatically. Check now and then an about. Okay, and again, this gives you access to the knowledge base to support and also to donate. So let's leave that as is. Now, it might be that you have multiple email addresses that you use, and although you could set up a separate key for each email address, it's probably better to have the same key for multiple email addresses. So let's see how we actually go about setting that up. Back across to mail, if I go to mail preferences, you'll see that on this particular email address, I have a couple of aliases. You're allowed, I think, up to 4 aliases on a free iCloud account and more if you have a paid iCloud account. But I've got an alias here called SCO-Demo99 at iCloud.com. So, because I've only set the key up for SCO-Demo3, if I go here, if I try and send an email to SCO-Demo99 at iCloud.com, you'll see that I can't encrypt. It hasn't got a key, it hasn't got a public or a private key for that particular mail account. So what I can do, and you can do this, it doesn't necessarily have to be an alias, it can be a completely different email address that you want to add to your public key. Let's say don't save for that. What you can do is, we'll pop mail down out of the way, go back across to GPG. Okay, so this is our SCO-Demo3 secret key, it's called. I go up to the header and show type. You'll see these are public keys. So these are keys that I've downloaded for other people. This is a secret key and a public key as well. So this is my secret key. Now, eventually you will end up with quite a list. If you just want to see your secret keys, you can just tap on this box down here. But what I want to do is I want to add an additional, what's called a user ID to my own secret key. And the way I do that is double tap on here. and then go to user IDs and just hit the plus sign. Okay, full name. Let's say this full name is going to be test account. And the email address is going to be scodemo99@icloud.com. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be an alias. It can be any other email address that you use. But once we've entered it in here, we'll just say generate user ID. Enter my passphrase again. And we'll say OK. Right, so that's fine. So now we've got SCODemo3 and SCODemo99. And this is the primary one. So we just want to make sure that's primary. And we'll say OK. So now what should happen if I close this down? Oh, before we do leave here, actually, if you do Control or right click and send public key to key server. So the changes that you've made, this additional email address that you've added, will now be published to the key server. So people can now find the scodemo99@icloud.com address as well. But we'll close that down, back into mail. And let's try a new one. This time we'll send it to scodemo99. Right, and that's now gone to black, and I can lock it so I can encrypt it. So that's the way you'd add additional email addresses to your existing public and private keys. Now before we move away from mail, just a couple of things. If you have multiple Macs, you'll need to set this mechanism up on all your Macs to read any encrypted emails. So that's one thing to bear in mind. The other thing to bear in mind as well is if you're a heavy iCloud web user, if you access mails using the iCloud web service, you'll still see the mail, you'll see the header at least, but you won't be able to see the content. However, if you're on a Mac with your public and private keys installed and the suite of tools, you can select the text and decode the text using services, and we'll look at that shortly. One other thing as well, if you're an iOS user, there is another application that I'll be showing you on the iOS show this week called IPGmail that allows you to use the public and private keys that you've created during this step and use that on your iOS device. But more about that over on the iOS show. Okay, let's have a look at some of the other features of using the GPG suite. Now, as well as your support for the mail plugin, you can actually use the underlying GPG engine to encrypt securely basically anything on your Mac or any content, for instance, files or contents of folders. And I know with the prevalence of cloud-based services, people are starting to get a bit twitchy about what they can put in the cloud. Just to give you an example, and I'll just give you some brief examples of some of the potential. If I go to, let's see, keyboard first, there are some services. I think by default, the file services are switched on. So there's some OpenPGP file services here. But if you go down to text, you'll see there's a load more. And we need to switch these on. You might need to log in and log out, or rather log out and log in once you switch these on, but these are all for text. Let's switch them all on. Okay, and we'll close that down. All right, let's say I wanted to go into text edit, and I'm working on a document that I'm going to, let's create a new document in iCloud. And let's just put some text in. So this is a text document that I don't really want any prying eyes to see. I mean, I can just save this now. So let's file save. And we'll save it to iCloud. Call it secret doc. But other than the standard security around iCloud, the contents of the document is unprotected. What I can do now, though, is select the text, Control or right click, go to services, say encrypt. You get this GPG services dialog box pop up. Now you'll notice that these are the public keys of Don McAllister and the GPG Tools team, and also my public and secret key as well. So if I just wanted to encrypt it so that only I could see it, I could select that, say OK. Right, and now that is completely encrypted. And I can save that. Let's close it down. And if anyone intercepts that document or accesses it on a remote site, they can't actually read the contents. Let me get it back. So I'll go back to text edit. There's my secret doc. Let's open it up. Okay, if I want to unencrypt it, select the contents, Control or right click, say decrypt, and there's the text back again. And that's used my private key to actually decrypt the contents of that particular document. So that's one example, and that's encrypting and decrypting the contents of a file. Let's say we wanted to do it at the file level. Let's say I'm working on this secret project. I've got this top secret pages document. I've actually got a copy folder set up. If I actually open up the copy folder in here, I've got one called Show Production that I'm actually sharing with Don McAllister. Okay, so let's say I want to drop this into here, and then that will be copied across to Don McAllister and he can access it. But I only really want Don McAllister to have access to this particular file. What I can do is, with the file selected, Control or right click, say Services, and we've got these new file level OpenPGP commands now. So I want to encrypt the file. Okay, so again, I can select from these public and private keys. Let's select Don McAllister. I can encrypt with password if I want, but I won't bother with that. I'll just say OK. Right, and there is my top secret pages.gpg, and that is now fully encrypted. And the only person who can decrypt that is myself and also Don McAllister. So if I drop this across over to copy, and let go. Okay, so that's in my show production. Let me go across actually to my Don McAllister machine, and I'll open it up from there and show you how I would decrypt it on the other machine. Right, so I'm across over on my MacBook Pro, and this is my copy folder on here, and here is the shared show production folder, and there in my shared show production folder is topsecretpages.gpg. Now this is my Don McAllister account, so I should be able to decrypt this. So if I go to Control or right click, go to Services, and then we'll say Decrypt File. There we go, decryption finished. Because I have the private and public key on this machine, and also I have my keychain switched on so I don't have to remember my passphrase, it's gone and decrypted the file, and I can now access that. Had this been sent to anybody else, or if multiple people were accessing this shared folder, and no one but Don McAllister could have actually unencrypted that particular file, or decrypted it rather. So that's just another example of what can be achieved using the GPG Tools suite. So hopefully that gives you a good idea on how to get up and running with GPG. I would suggest going across, having a read through some of the support documentation, just familiarizing yourself. If you have any questions before you go ahead and install it, just go over to gpgtools.org and go to the support tab, and there's lots of information in there about how to get started. But from what I've seen, it is fairly simple and very straightforward to set up. And once you're set up, there's very little you need to do after that point. Okay, that's it for GPG Tools. Let's now go and take a look at the new ScreenCastsOnline monthly magazine and the new text version, especially for the iPhone and iPod Touch. Well, I'm delighted to say that the magazine is now available for the iPhone. Let's take a look at some of the new features in the new text version of the magazine. Now, this is a test version of issue 13, which is due out on the 1st of August. So if I go into here, and let's say view. The nice thing about this new magazine is that it contains both the text version and the normal version as well. So you don't have to choose which one to download. It's downloaded, both versions are downloaded within the same issue of the magazine. So that's one great new feature. As you can see, it's a very simplistic, very easy to navigate approach. The idea really is to just make it a lot more readable on the iPhone. So if I just swipe across to the next article, you'll see it's just plain text, although we have still included all the links and all the videos as well. So it's not a cut down version of the magazine by any stretch of the imagination. It's just formatted to make it easier to read. If I go to the next article, I can just swipe across. That's another article. Again, swipe up and down to read. If I want to move across to the next article, just go across. Right, so we have our first video tutorial. So this is the one about Hazel. And as you can see, I've got a play button there. Just tap on that. That would start the video. I could rotate the device and see the video on my iPhone. And also we have AirPlay support as well. So this is great for if you want to take the iPhone with you and have your tutorials on the iPhone, but play it on a larger screen. You can play the videos on here and then use AirPlay to play them onto a bigger screen using Apple TV. So that's the Mac video tutorial. Let's just scroll across once more. So there's an iOS video tutorial. Again, we'll scroll across. And there's one of the articles. So this is an article by Katie Floyd. Again, you can just scroll up and down. YouTube videos are in there. All the links that Katie's put in, they're all replicated as well. Now, if, as you can probably see, it's quite a large font anyway by default, just to make it easier to read. But if you want to make it even larger, you can do, because there are some extra controls built into the iPhone version. If I just tap and hold anywhere on the page, right, we get a couple of things. We get a formatting and navigation toolbar at the top. We also get an index, so we can see the index down here. I can just flick through, see what's contained within the magazine. I want to go to another article. The articles currently have the author's name and the videos don't. So I can see here there's an article about my walking desk. I can tap on there, takes me directly to that article. I can have a read through. Now if I want to change the text to make it bigger, I can tap and hold. And then up at the top, you'll see there are two text buttons. So the larger font, if I tap on that, it will actually increase the font. So of course, this is much better now for people who have difficulty seeing. They can actually zoom up the text to a really large amount if they want to. I can put it back down just by tapping the small a. And then I can go back out by tapping the home button. We'll just go back in again once more. So we'll view. Okay, takes me back to where I was. I can read through. I can swipe to the right to go to the previous article. Swipe to the left to take me back. Tap and hold. It brings up the index at the bottom and the formatting and navigation toolbar. One other icon is the small iPad icon up in the top corner. So if I tap on there, we actually get the full magazine in its layout. But as you can see on the iPad, although, if you could actually read it at a stretch, but really, if you want to go back to the text version, tap and hold on the page, tap the T this time, and that takes us back into the text version. Okay, let's go back to the cover page, and there we are. So that's the new text version of the ScreenCastsOnline monthly magazine. So that's it for this week. I hope you find some use for the text version of the magazine. One huge favour to ask, by the way, and that's because it's a new version of the app. All the reviews, all the ratings in iTunes disappear. They're still there, but they're quite hard to find. So if you do have a couple of minutes, if you go across to iTunes, or actually you can do it from within the magazine itself. On the welcome page, there's a link down at the bottom of the page. But basically that will take you across to Newsstand. It will find the magazine for you. And then if you can just leave a rating and or a review, that would be fantastic. It really does help spread the word and get the word out about ScreenCastsOnline and the magazine. But that's it for this week. I'll speak to you next time.